his heart. And from the Anunnaki, literally, he says, and if he goes and gets an MRI, essentially, or not an MRI, but where he goes into the machine, yeah, an MRI, like it messes with his heart. He can't do it. So I can't wait to hear if there's some parallels there. And please tell our audience about your testimony, because that's what we're here for.
Oh, right on. I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So let's just start off with Michael's life. So Michael, just tell us a little bit about, like I said when we were talking before the show, you have an interesting, fascinating life. Tell us a little bit about you. You're a musician. Before all of this stuff came to you about the esoteric, the Anunnaki, you're finding out about your Indian bloodline. Just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, more than anything, I'm a musician, a guitarist, and that's where my passion has been. And actually, I've found my closest connection to source has been through music. I was very serious about music to the point that in 2001, I ended up winning a nationwide guitar contest. Your listeners may know who Steve Vai is. He played for Frank Zappa, and then when David Lee Roth quit Van Halen, he was one of my idols, and he ended up holding a guitar contest. You know what? I got to tell this. This is way before meeting the Anunnaki or anything. I work for this company, and it gets back to Steve Vai music. So, I started having contact with the Anunnaki about late 2000 and the late 2000s, actually, right around the 2000 threshold there. And they told me, if thoughts create reality, and if you have enough faith to step out without a net, so to speak, because I worked at this company for 15 years and worked my way into management. I had a house and a car, but I projected myself in the future, and money didn't even matter. I was like, God, if I'm an old man, I'm still working here. It seems black to me, So I ended up putting myself on the layoff list, and they didn't want to do that, but we worked it out where they said, if you stay till the end, we'll give you a nice severance package. So that worked out, and about 5 months went by, and no magical doors had opened. They told me if you just had the faith that you would meet who you need to meet, and doors would open, and it would be effortless. And that's the way it should be if you're in the flow with the universe. So 5 months went by, nothing had transpired, and I started to have that negative inner dialogue, like, what are you doing? You got a house and all this shit. And at that point, I had the most lucid vision and dream. And in it, I was led down a corridor, and it led into a club. And Steve Vai was doing a sound check. And I was like, oh my God, that's Steve Vai, because I'm such a fan, like, to me, I get starstruck, holy crap, Steve Vai. And he was doing a song in this vision. It was called There's a Train That's Leaving. And I remember it being very spiritual. And he was actually levitating off the floor as he was performing. And he turned around and levitated right over to where me and this guide was. And the music stopped. And he said, welcome aboard. But when he said, welcome aboard, it was like in one of those movie divine God voices, and it woke me right up out of this lucid vision state. And I was like, what the heck was that about, And I just chucked it into my, can we swear on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I call it my what the fuck drawer in my mind, So that went right into the what the fuck drawer. And the next morning I got
exactly.
So I woke up the next day, and I had this really crazy premonition feeling that there's a synchronicity waiting for me at vi.com. So I went there, and in my mind I was like, man, wouldn't it be weird if he was really working on a song called There's a Train That's Leaving or something like that? Well, the first thing when I visited his website, it said, enter the Steve Vai Ibanez Guitar Challenge. The fur went up on the back of my neck, man. I knew I was going to win that contest, and I haven't even recorded a note, for the contest. And I was so confident because I just met him the night before in this vision, and he said, welcome aboard. So sure enough, the stars ended up lining up, and I did end up winning the contest. And it was a huge confirmation for me to, let go and let God, as they say. I don't really like the word God, by the way. It has so much baggage that comes with it. I like all that is, but it is what it is.
Awesome.
So that's the music thing. I've went on to, I've produced 3 CDs. I've done the soundtrack to a documentary me and David Sarita did called Music from Here to Andromeda. And so music has always been the backbone of everything I've experienced. But yeah, like you said, things really started to change in 2008. So
talk a little bit about that. So what happened?
Well, I live very close to Lake Erie, and around 2005 time period, I started seeing these orbs of light out over Lake Erie. And it got to the point where I decided to see if I could find some shoreline, some beaches that I could go down around sunset and hang out and see if I could get some of this stuff on film. And sure enough, I would go down with my little Sony Digital 8 handy camcorder, and I would have it on a tripod, and I'd have it set up, and I'd just sit around sunset and after, and if a big ball of light went by, I was sitting there waiting and ready to film them. And also, one thing I learned from David Sarita was that these orbs, you can, sometimes you can't see them in our normal spectrum of light, but if you go to infrared, they're very visible because they're actually vibrating in higher frequency realms than our eyes can pick up, like bees and birds, they can see into the infrared, and we can't. So I learned how in my camera while I was filming them, I would go from normal shot where you could see all the nice, beautiful colors, and I'd flip the switch into super night vision. And then all of a sudden you'd see the lay of the land and, the lake, and, really get an idea of what you're looking at. And then I'd switch it back because I really like seeing the color, so it was daunting for me to figure out which mode to film it in. But I started to accumulate quite a library of footage. And it ended up where right now my YouTube channel has over 4.5 million views.
That's awesome.
And that, if anyone wants to check it out, it's Frozen Hill, all one word, and that's my YouTube channel. But that is what brought the History Channel to my door, is that they were doing a show on Skywatchers. And I was going to have about a 5-minute segment in the show, and they were going to cover the Lake Erie UFOs, and that was that. When they came to interview me in late 2007, they had went to Virginia 2 weeks prior, and they had interviewed another contactee, and his name was Terrell Copeland. And what they had found is Terrell had filmed the exact same orbs of light that I had filmed over Lake Erie. He had the same bed of spiritual information given to him, which is the belief, which is our thoughts, feelings, and emotions create our own perceived physical reality.
Right.
And the same kind of story of contact. What they found out with him, though, was he was getting deployed overseas, and they did a thorough medical test and blood work. And what they found was he had a blood anomaly that none of the best military doctors could find out why that he had this. So he was given an honorary discharge out of the military. So the History Channel thought, wow, wouldn't it be weird if these two guys that have such similar stories, that have never met each other, they're 500 miles apart, if this other guy in Cleveland, being me, wouldn't it be weird if I ended up with that same unknown blood anomaly? So without
Is it RH negative blood?
It's not, a lot of people ask me that, and I can tell you that why this is kind of funny is I am the biggest baby when it comes to needles. Like, it's almost a phobia, and I have never given blood. It scares the hell out of me. I do not like needles. Maybe it was just a defensive mechanism, but so what had happened, they didn't tell me, because if they would have told me they were flying me to Boston to have my blood work done by a Harvard professor, I probably would have said no, because I'm like, hell no, it's not sticking a needle in me, But
Right.
when I got to Boston, that's exactly what was going on. And they had flown Terrell there as well. And they had our blood work done by a Harvard professor. His name was David Systrom. And this episode, by the way, is called Alien Contact, and it's on UFO Hunters Season 1. And
I've actually seen that. I still have I've watched all those episodes. I've taped them on DirecTV about 2 or 3 times, and they continue to tape. So I've seen that episode, actually.
Oh,
That's
right
awesome.
on. Yeah, what's weird with that is I never knew how the History Channel felt about the show. But Bill Burns, the host of UFO Hunters and many other things, he had wrote a book and released it in 2011 called UFO Hunters the Book. And, Bill's a New York Times best-selling author. He did The Day After Roswell with Colonel Philip Corso.
Right.
So, by the way, we can get into that, because I found out there are some things that weren't included in the book, and I got Bill to tell me what it is, but we can get into that later.
Sure.
So in the book, I found out for the first time it was our episode that got the show renewed for a 2nd season. They liked the drama of Bill saying, these guys are hybrids, and the other host is going, dude, you just can't say that out loud, So yeah, remember that part where they went outside and kind of yelled at each other, and Bill's like, hey, it is what it is. He said they don't have normal human blood. I can tell you guys, if you're interested, the details of the blood anomaly that they did.
That'd be fantastic. And if you could, as well as not only the details on it, but is there any type of paperwork or anything that verifies this kind of stuff? Is that why they were so interested to discuss this with you and actually put it on that channel? Because that's a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yes, and it's actually anyone that has their blood work done up. It's a test that everyone. It's going to be a part of any blood test, and that is your creatine kinase levels.
Right.
And creatine kinase, everyone's brains releases this enzyme, and the normal uh, levels of this in the blood is 25 parts per liter of blood is creatine kinase. And creatine kinase brings oxygen into the bloodstream. So what happens is if you've done bodily damage to yourself, or you've ripped a muscle, or had a heart attack or something like that, that your brain releases more creatine kinase, up to about 300 parts per liter of blood. So it brings more oxygen into the bloodstream to facilitate healing to that damaged area. So what they found, if you, like, let's go back and say the normal levels of creatine kinase in the blood is 25 parts per liter of blood. My levels were at 2100.
Wow.
So you can imagine it's, the blood is being super oxygenated. Yeah, that's a word. And what I found out was the more oxygen in the blood equates to how much electrical capacitance your body is holding on a cellular level, which
Right.
could be considered chi or prana or life force, whatever you want to call it. So this all gets into an indicator of what this is later on. We can get into this, but when I met the Anunnaki a little bit later on, they said, what they released on the History Channel is an indication of your being in our hybrid bloodline, because we had to create an offshoot of the human vessel that had more chi available, because when we tried to incarnate into the human vessel prior to the Nephilim being created, they spontaneously combusted. The human body wasn't capable of handling their energetic levels, so they had to create an offshoot that they could come in to try to steer this experiment from the inside, because there's an absolute reason why we've been going through everything that we've been going through. But so the, RH negative, a lot of people ask me, I don't know, I've heard that yes, it is an indicator of the Anunnaki bloodline. What I don't know is if everyone that is RH negative is also has this creatine kinase increase, because when I was brought into the remote viewers group, they told me they had about 200 members in this group, and 12 of them had my bloodline, and my levels of 2100 would put me in about the middle of those 12.
Wow.
So I don't know the answer to, this is a work in progress. We'll figure it out together.
Let me take you a little bit back, Rex. I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me just take you a little bit back real quick. So you said the Anunnaki came. You met the Anunnaki. So you went to Boston. I'm trying to create this timeline so everybody can understand it. You went to Boston. You had your blood measured. Creatine kinase levels were off the chart. It's clear that you're some form of a, through the show, that you're some sort of a hybrid, human, whatever. At what point did the Anunnaki contact you? And I'm kind of getting into the Q&A, so I want to save it for later. But how did they contact you, and in what form? These were humans, I assume, correct?
Right on. Well, it's a great question. And to fit in the timeline, the History Channel show aired in March of 2008. And I didn't know anything about any of this because, at this point, I had never heard of an Anunnaki. I didn't know even my heritage. Because I was adopted at birth and didn't know about the Native American Indian connection or anything. So March of 2008, the show airs. In the summer of 2008, I get invited by a friend to go to this festival in New York, and it's called Sirius Rising. And at this point, obviously, if I didn't know the Anunnaki, I didn't know they were Syrians. I had no idea what I was being brought to. Here, it's a festival at it's actually like an enchanted forest called Brushwood in New York, and they had this festival there. So I went, and really, I thought I was just going camping. I heard it's pretty much, I guess you'd call it a pagan festival. And I'm not pagan. I don't have nothing against them or anything, but I'm just not. So I just thought really I was going on a camping trip. And what happened was once we were there, there's, a lot of ceremony going on. And I kind of felt like a stranger in a strange land, like, this is kind of odd. And where I was staying at, this place, you can actually own a lot of land there to put up a little bit permanent structures of, so they had a structure there at a land that was owned by the girl that I went there with. One of her friends owned a lot of land, and they had this gazebo, and they called it the I Dream a Genie bottle, because once you got in it, it was kind of discombobulating because it was all had really beautiful fabric all the way around it, but it was round, and only one of those sections to get out had a way to get out. Other than that, you'd pull the fabric back and there'd be a big metal part of the gazebo structure. It's like, well, this ain't it. Go to the next one. No, this ain't it. So, and it was a round structure. It had a round bed in it, and it had a chandelier that hung down from the middle of it. And the whole thing had candles coming out from the insides of the walls that lit up the place at night. So this one gentleman, he told me that his magical name, I don't know if I should even get, well, it doesn't matter. He said his name was Loki. And at that time, there was no Thor or nothing. I'm like, okay, you know, cool. And
Loki, the trickster.
Oh yeah,
The most God. Yeah, keep going.
Yes, indeed. So later on, they were preparing to do this ceremony, and he was standing next to me. He said, "You know, I'm going to go back to the site and make sure everything's buttoned down." I said, "Well, I'm not doing nothing. I'll go with you." So he and I walked back, and right when we got back to the site, he said, "There's some people who've been waiting to talk to you, and they are waiting for you in the genie bottle." I thought, wow, that's interesting, you know. So I walked over to the genie bottle and walked in. Loki didn't enter with me. It was only me. And when I walked in, there was a male and a female that was sitting on this round couch inside this thing. And in front of the couch, they had like this beanbag chair that had a built-in back to it somehow. And it was directly in front of the bed. So they asked me to sit down in front of them, and it was really comfortable. And so to get the setting, you know, here I am sitting right in front of me, sitting on this round bed was this male, and he had his back up and his legs were out, and then his female next to him. And the first thing I noticed is I could see everything lit perfectly, but when it got to their neck, it looked like there's almost like some kind of smoke or a shadow that was coming from an invisible source, and it just totally obscured their face, and it tracked their face. Like no matter where they looked, they were faceless. Wow. And I said, you know, the first words to them was, "Can I see your faces?" And they said, "No, you'll have to wait till tomorrow to see our true faces." And right there, I thought that was odd, because he didn't say, "See our faces, what are you talking about?" It's like he knew I couldn't see their faces. Here I find out Ra means the hidden one, and no face is like this total archetype of Team Bad Cop, the Seven Lords of Darkness. You know, like if you see, so is Cthulhu, but we can get into that. But I don't know how much you want to get into dark side mythology. I'd rather talk about the light.
Yeah.
Why not go both routes, man? I mean, that's one of the, if I can jump in just for a second. I mean, this is a lot of information that a lot of us need to hear about, especially that listen to Decoders of Truth, Leak Project, you know, people that follow Jay, people that keep track of the updates. This is incredible. The stuff you're talking about is newer information to me. So please share both sides with us if you feel comfortable doing so.
Oh, right on. Yeah. You know, it's all knowledge. And to me, like when I found out that, you know, the dark side has their own Bible that they brainwash people, and it's called the Protocols of Zion. And so I thought, you know, like you're saying, I want to know everything. And I think to know where the mindset from the opposition is coming from is worthwhile. So boy, I wouldn't advise going and reading it, though. It's some sick stuff. You know, it's just all brainwashing about, you know, making them feel that they're somehow superior and that the rest of the world is cattle, and you know they're tempted into giving their power away in these fashions. But
well, real quick about that, Michael. So the Protocols of Zion, you know, I'm just going to just like connect the dots. Is that kind of the NWO, you know, the representation of the darkness that exists on our planet right now?
Yes, it's you know, picture the brainwashing blueprint book that once a person is chosen to go down the path of the seven Dark Lords and start giving their energy and power away to an illusionary outside source, right, that sooner or later someone's going to slap that book down in front of them and brainwash the hell out of them to see how dark that they can take it. Because once I found out, and you know, we can get into this, but once you start to go down to the path of light or darkness, you know, the seven Lords of Darkness, you know, originally it's going to be very compassionate. It's going to be the most compassionate level, you know, starting in the middle. But if someone starts going down the dark side, the dark will see how dark you're going to go. And it's going to progressively get more suffering through your own free will. You know, what I've learned is this whole thing is learning about free will and self-inflicted suffering through your own free will. Because that's what the archons are there for, is to prove that, yeah, we won't ever stand up in our own energy and choose our own I am, and stand up in our sovereignty, you know? So it's their role to prove that a human won't do it. And And so once an initiate starts going down that path, they'll be tested. And it usually ends in child sacrifice, which is interesting because you see Abraham in the Bible, you know, and he failed the test, right? You know, the dark side's going, you know what, show us how much you love us, and why don't you kill your son? The answer should have been no, man. You know, what I've heard over and over is never give your power away to an outside illusionary source.
Right.
Never give your power away to anything that asks you to do something that offends your soul. Even if it's coming from someone that you trust, you got to have your own center, you know, and, you know, so yeah, does that answer the question?
That's well said. If I could jump in for a second, because you're hitting on so many powerful points. You brought up the Archons. I was thinking about the Archons right before you brought them up. You talked about the Anunnaki. There's so much speculation on what the difference is between the two. I'm just going to give my interpretation. I have studied the Archons in greater detail than most, and what I understand of them is they influence people outside of the 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum that people pick up with their eyes. And they influence people kind of on a technological, mental level, and they feed off of our energy, whether it's good or bad, but I think they enjoy the negative side of things more. But are they the Anunnaki in one? Are they different? Are they influencing some of the Anunnaki, causing the situations? What's your take on the Archons and the Anunnaki and the people or the beings that have taken you and actually, you know, abducted you literally?
Great questions, Rex. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, right on. It is great questions. And it's actually right where I'm at in working through all of this myself, because what I've come to the conclusion of, there's two different options here. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth specifically says that on the Seven Lords of Darkness, the seed of a lesser spawn was brought in to occupy some of those seats, which some people would say they're the Archons,
right,
or the Draconians, or, you know, Jinn, whatever you want to put them.
Yeah, keep going. Yep.
Yeah, and that this group of extraterrestrials truly is a multidimensional race that feeds off of our mental energy if we allow it and give it to them. And
so real quick, Michael, David Wilcox in his stuff recently with Corey Good calls it that negative energy. They call it la louche, and that these beings feed off of that negative energy. You've heard of that too, right?
No, actually, no. I've never. Sounds right. You know,
right.
Put a label on it. That's fine.
Right.
But there's another option here, and this is where I'm stuck. I've met, like, the Arcturian ambassador here. I talked to him about this. He said, Michael, we'll become whatever you need to evolve, light or dark. Which, you know, to me makes even a little bit more sense, because believing that there's this multidimensional evil source is truly more dualistic thinking, us and them. Whereas the idea that this intelligence knows what, you know, if you got a lot of fear and doubt and garbage in your belief system, that needs to be transmuted, because they understand thought has an electromagnetic reality.
Right.
We're broadcasting, you know, frequency. And if there's frequency, there's energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed. We already know this through our today's physics.
Right.
So the question is, how do you transmute a negative thought form? Well, you live it. It's going to come up in your own personal reality. And if you can choose love over fear, because it wouldn't be coming up in our lives again if it had been transmuted already in the past. And so what happens is it keeps coming up, and we keep going, why does the same stuff keep happening over and over and over again in our lives? It's because those energies haven't been transmuted into their higher octaves of love through you going through the experience in your own 3D physical reality and transmuting those thought forms of fear into love. And then they're in a higher frequency, and then you're done with it, and it won't keep manifesting. So did that answer the question?
Most of it. I want to know more about the Archons and the Anunnaki, though, at least the differences. Then you said you feel that some of them have actually taken over certain Anunnaki, but then you talked about this other entity that you've made contact with that actually says it'll be good or bad. And that actually, in my opinion, scares me a little bit more than, I mean, or I have a little bit more concern, I should say is the term, to somebody that would say I can be good or bad, because you don't know what to expect with that person. I mean, if somebody says they're bad, and if their intent is destruction and pain and suffering, and,
See, though,
and you
it's
know
not.
that.
It's not. It's them understanding that, you know, picture at this point that the Anunnaki have broken off into two camps. One's going to reflect back a negative polarity, and one's going to reflect back a positive polarity. So I call them bad cop, you know, on the dark side. So they look over their job is to look over the mass consciousness and see if someone is vibrating fear. They're going to come and let that person experience their own dark-based fear in an accelerated fashion, person to person, face to face, and real personal. And in the hopes that they'll choose love over fear and transmute that energy, because it's shadow work. You know, we all have the shadow self of the wounded child that lives within us all.
Ego.
Yeah, and it needs transmuted. There's no other way. No one can do it for you. You have to face whatever those, and we all have our own baggage, right?
Sure.
So it's bad cop's role to make sure you get an opportunity to experience your own mental thought forms. And if it's dark, then, you know, sorry about that. So does that make sense? You know,
It does to me. I'll just give you an analogy. Like my wife was very fond of saying to me that thoughts become things. So,
yes.
you know, it's that energy, like you said, the transmutation or the vibration, both really are the same, where as long as you're vibrating positively and thinking, you know, inspiring / positive thoughts, that you stay on that wavelength and you connect with people who are also vibrating at that frequency, correct?
Yes. I'll tell you what the problem is, though, is, you know, once you start to understand these concepts and start to be responsible for your own mental energy, we all have a lot of shadow work that we need to process and transmute. The first stuff that we're going to transmute is probably going to be pretty easy stuff that's really doesn't scare the shit out of you. But the stuff that's real deep down in the subconscious that's been pushed away, once you do the clearing of that bucket of dark water, you know, when you get to the bottom, that's the stuff that you really don't want to face with. And it's never fun for that stuff to emerge into our physical 3D reality, but it has to, because that's how it's going to get transmuted. But the deal is, none of it is even necessary. If you can, even in mid-step, change your own belief system and go, you know what, I no longer give my power away to outside sources. I'm going to reclaim my own sovereignty, and no one has any ability to affect me from the outside. It doesn't even need transmuted at that point. You've transmuted it yourself, if that makes sense. So it's, the dark testing is only if you need dark cleansing, you know, and we're all under the spell up until this point. So,
well, let me ask you another question. Go ahead, Brax. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And Michael, I appreciate you mentioning these questions. One of the things that I've wondered before, though, is I understood everything you were saying. I get it. I appreciate that. And I, on another level, wonder if there's this influence that literally is to the point of, it does want destruction. It does feed off of this negativity to the point to where it will eventually consume itself and everything in it, unless there's this balance kept amongst people like you, like Jay, like myself, like many people that listen to Leak Project, Decoders of Truth, etc. So with that being said, I mean, you brought up the Protocols of Zion. I've read that. That is absolutely frightening. It's interesting because back in 2010, 2009, it was a lot easier to find that. Right. If you looked it up on a search engine, just super easy. Now you can barely find it, and you're going to have to go through multiple pages. So that's got some interesting stuff, and I do see a lot of parallels there. And I've heard of the Albert Pike letter that came out supposedly many years ago that portrayed the 3 world wars, etc. But I don't know if that's after the fact or before. I can't verify it. So I'm definitely agnostic on that. But what's your take? Like, do you remember these experiences with the Anunnaki, and do you feel that there's like this rogue faction that is to the point of it's kind of lost it, you know? I mean, it literally, and it's a dangerous. It's to the point of danger, almost like, let's go to the Star Wars film, The Dark Side. You know, are there? I mean, is there something? I mean, is Darth Vader out there wanting to wipe everything out, man? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, again, you know, I can tell you, even what I've perceived in my own physical, personal reality, and all of these meetings that I'm talking about was in the flesh, and it's not channeling. It's like these people are physically real people, and they're in front of me. And through recently being brought before the Council of the Seven Lords, the head Lord of Darkness had revealed himself to me. And I can tell you, he seemed visibly really, really pissed off when the gig was up and I got past them and passed the tests. Matter of fact, he came up to me and he goes, you know, if you didn't have that mutated blood, we would have had you. And he had fucking venom in his eyes. And
so what does this person look like?
I gotta hear about this, man.
Is this a human form?
Yes.
Seven Lord. So they're literally, you can't distinguish them from like a quote unquote alien or a dark being. I mean, they just look like a human.
Yeah, they look like a human. He told me that he had been incarnating as what was known as a bard. And he said a bard, when you look in the past, like in England and kingship, that the bard always sat next to the king. And it was his role to go out and take a look in the kingdom and condense the state of the kingdom into a short Shakespearean type short story that would communicate the state of the kingdom to the king in an accelerated fashion, because the king didn't have time for all the little details. He needed it put together. And he said, you'll see, I always sit next to the king or the chief. I sit on the left. And as I told you, once Yahweh had revealed himself to me, he said, I work with the 7 lords of light and the 7 lords of darkness, and I'm the only one who sits directly in the middle, and I'm the only one who holds a seat on both sides, both light and dark. And so this person who sat next to him, he told me that that was the position of the bard, and he had been incarnating into the human form for 7,000 years, and they had to incarnate as a bard, and it was a very specific bloodline, he told me. It was kind of funny because he was almost like the character in a film where he was so sure and gloating because he truly thought he had the key to destroy me. And he told me what it was, actually. It's almost like in the movie where the guy's so egoed out that there's no way that you're gonna not fall in the trap. So he revealed a lot to me, and one thing was very interesting, but we can get into this. He brought up very early in this 4-day ceremony, this woman was next to him, and this gentleman walks away, the bard, we will call him. He walks away and leaves me with this woman, and she seemed at that time, I even thought, man, she's odd. I mean, she was about the least personable person I've ever met, and really there was not much discussion. It was awkward silence. And so then he walked back in a couple minutes. Well, the next day is when he revealed a lot to me, and he was kind of like gloating. He goes, we tested you. We can see, we send an information packet of a very specific amount of information holographically, quantumly, and we can see how fast you assimilate a download from the ether, and that you have the fastest download rate of anyone we've ever tested. And he said it was 7 seconds. And I have no reference point, so I have no clue. But I know as a musician, I kind of see what they're saying, that to be a good musician, you have to be multidimensionally aware of all your band members within the moment, and to keep everything locked in and tight, And so that's information of taking it in on an auditory level, visually in the moment. But I guess while we're just going through this and what happened with him, he came up to me the second night of this Halls of Amenti that was gift wrapped as a Native American Indian ceremony that was known as a sun dance, which no matter how this is implemented, there's always this blood and flesh sacrifice portion of the testing. And in the Native American Indian culture, they pierce. And truly, they even say, though, here's the deal, is even in their culture, they call it heyoka, which is backwards. It's the clown, it's the trickster. And if something is heyoka, and they all of them know, actually day 3 of the Sundance is called Heyoka Day, and everything's backwards. And so day 2, he comes to me and says, and he's giggly. I'm talking about the bard, the one that holds the next seat next to Yahweh on the dark. He said, I'm so excited. I had a dream and it had everything to do with you. And I said, well, all right. I have no clue what he's talking about, And he said, what I can tell you is if a dream is confirmed in reality, it has to be reenacted at the Sundance. And your dream, when you showed up in my dream and what happened has been confirmed here. There was a gentleman in this vision, and he's here for real now. And he told me who he was, and he was from Canada. He was a Blackfoot. And he said, we're really excited because now we're going to reenact your dream tomorrow. And I thought, well, that's freaking crazy. First of all, the thought of something, my dream that he had is going to be reenacted at a Sundance. That's freaking weird, right?
Yeah.
So I said, what is it? And he said, I can't tell you. It would take away from the energy. So I was thinking, oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what happened after this is these previous 2 days, it was sweltering. It was about 100 degrees out. It was so hot. And I was trying to even find shade under a tree and just get out of the sun. Well, here, some of my friends were what they call sun dancing, which, is continually dancing all day while you're staring in the sun, and you're not allowed to drink any food or any water, and for 4 days. And at the end, after being out in the 100-degree sun with no food or no water, at night, they take you into a super hot sweat lodge. Native American Indian sweat lodge. Then you sleep, and the next day you get up and you do the same thing over again. And some of my friends had signed up to dance for the very first time. And I was just horrified at, like, I felt so bad for them, you know, like, oh my God. So the end of day 2, I prayed for rain with everything that I had in my body, like, just to give them some relief, you know, maybe, like. So what happened was, you know, this is right after the bard had talked to me and all of this, and I knew the next day somehow my dream he had was going to be reenacted. And that night of day 2, me and my friend Sheldon Bird, which he's become a dear friend, and but that's a whole nother story. We're on the road that was near the Sundance grounds, and we're looking way off in the distance because this was in Utah. It's all farmland. It's super flat, so you could just see forever. Way
What
off.
part of Utah? Like Four Corners area, or? And sorry to interrupt.
No, it's all good.
interested.
Shit, dude, I don't remember. I've never been there before, and it was only for this ceremony. I don't remember.
Did it have like a lot of red rock? A lot of
yeah, if you had a lot of red rock, it'd be down by St. George, right? Rex down in the
no, there was no red.
Moab.
It was nothing but flat land. There's no red rock at all. No, nothing. It was just nothing but farmland. I can find out for you because
no worries.
It's got to be Eastern Utah. It's got to be Eastern Utah. Go ahead.
So
cool. We continue.
We're on this dirt road next to the grounds, and you know, it's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and we see this storm coming in, and there's no storm on the forecast at all. It's, you know, those 4 days were supposed to be clear, and this storm looked crazy, man. It looked like something from the Independence Day movie or something. It was this really small condensed storm that was filled with nothing but lightning, but it was like hundreds of lightning strikes per minute. And the whole thing was just glowing and very small and compact. And a matter of fact, I found someone filmed that storm coming in, and I posted on my wall the actual storm. So it is mind blowing when you see the video. But we hadn't slept real well, you know, and it looked like it. I'm thinking, man, if that thing doesn't dissipate, it looks like it's coming this way. Wouldn't that be something? So we went to bed, and about 5:30 in the morning, sure enough, that thing pulled right up over the Sundance grounds and unleashed the most beautiful just waterfall of rain. And I got up out of my tent because at this thing where, you know, you're not allowed to bathe or anything for 4 days, and I was like, I need a shower, you know. So it was beautiful to get out and dance in the rain, and it took the heat off, and it felt beautiful because I'd just been so hot the previous 2 days. It truly felt divine. And I can tell you what I didn't know is that the dark and the light are there doing their thing on initiates, and it's in the Illuminati mind programming. I learned after this, Yahweh, you know, I said, listen, spirit is controlling those drummers to hit very precise beats per minute and rhythmic patterns that induce altered states of consciousness that where people are more susceptible to suggestion. And, you know, part of that mind programming was to never pray for rain. And so what I didn't know, if one person had enough love and compassion to pray for rain, you automatically got the backing of the 7 Lords of Light. Because not only had you disobeyed the Illuminati mind programming that said never pray for rain, but you showed love and compassion for your fellow man and woman, brother and sister, you know? So I didn't know. I just, you know, I said I passed the test by being a decent person. It's really all it took. But so the next morning, I went, and it's kind of interesting because the one that administered this whole ceremony, he kept trying to get me to come, and like I kept getting messages, you know, Chief wants you to come and sit with him. I had this weird feeling like I needed to get my grounding first and try to figure out. And I told my friend that was there with me, give a shout out to Al James, hey brother. I told him, you know, the problem is I'm not told him I'm not going to Sundance, you know. So that morning, the first thing that happened was, as I said, this person revealed themselves and said, I hold a seat on both sides, light and dark. So he came out from the dark chair and he said, who prayed for rain? You know, and he went up to all the dancers, he's pointing out, did you pray for rain? No, I didn't pray for rain, Chief. Did you pray for rain? No, I didn't pray for rain, Chief. When he got around the circle and we made eye contact, I said, I prayed for rain, Chief. So wasn't it beautiful? I said, I got out and danced in it. Did you? He looks at me and he just goes, Michael prayed for rain. Well, at that point, I did go and sit down with him then, and I told him, Chief, I don't Sundance. I'm not going to Sundance. It's not my way, but I respect your right to do it, and that's all good, but, you know, I'm not going to be Sundance. And he looked at me and said, Michael, I'm so glad you didn't enter that circle, He said, spirit looks at anybody that participates in these blood and flesh offering ceremonies as prostitute. He said, I've never told anyone they can't get out of there and go get a drink of water. They're doing this to themselves. And he even went in and showed me all the Christian symbology that they use in their programming. He said, look at those dancers, what they have on their heads. That's the crown of thorns that Jesus wore. Look at what they're wearing around their wrists. That's where Jesus was attached to the cross. Look at their ankles and the bands that they have around. That's where it said it's all Christian mythology that we use to pretty much trick them to give their energy away over to the archons, right? He said that's when it all, like, the veil came down, and he told me he worked with the 7 Lords of Light and the 7 Lords of Darkness. And so I'll tell you what happened was, instead of the 100-degree weather we had day 1 and 2, day 3, the rain totally had taken the sin out of the air. First of all, talking about the rain washing the sins away, right? There was this dark energy that was there the previous 2 days, and it was absolutely gone. And instead of the stifling heat in 100 degrees, it was about 80 degrees, and there was this beautiful moisture that held in the air all day long. It's like you're on a tropical island, and everyone was talking about, oh my God, this day feels freaking blessed, you know? But we were sitting there, and this gets back to them reenacting the dream, because all of a sudden he looked at me and said, Michael, if you enter that circle, you're going to be lying in a fetal position, crying out for your mama. You're going to have your thumb in your mouth. You'll have the cleanest thumb of anybody in this whole place if you enter that circle. I'm thinking, the chills went through my spine, because I knew he was communicating something. What I didn't know is he knew what they were going to do with this here in the future to try to trick me in. So what had truly went down, and I learned after the fact, is the bard, the head of the 7 Lords of Darkness, in his vision, I had a friend who had danced for the first time in real, and he was there and he did dance for real. And in his vision, he passed out and he died. And that brought me into the circle to help him and throw him over my shoulder. And so sure enough, what they did, the Dark Lord went and told him to fake passing out. And sure enough, I started to go into a panic attack. I was like, I already knew none of this was even necessary. And here's my friend laying on the ground. And I'll tell you, he looked like he was dead. You know, he lay there for 10 minutes without even the smallest little movement of anything. What really broke me is they went and grabbed him then and pulled him to the tree and started to strap him and tie him to the tree. Again, Christian symbolism, right? I flipped out. I stood up. I go, I'll fucking tear this place apart. This isn't even necessary. And I started to enter the circle. And one of the grandmothers almost tackled me. And she had a big glass of water. And she said, drink for him. And I got it, you know. Somehow she communicated to me. If any human on this planet ever drank water for another human, I did. I wished and prayed for every nutrient of that water to go to my friend. And she got me to settle down, because I was going into a panic attack, and I was entering the circle. I didn't know it was all illusion. I didn't know that they had told him to fake passing out. In my mind, my friend was in need and in trouble. And once I had come to my senses, and she calmed me down, and after I got done with the first glass of water, which by the way was interesting, it had a lemon in it, she hands me another glass of lemon water, and she said, drink another for him. So I drank that one as well. And then I got up and I thought, okay, I'm going to walk back to the circle. Truly, if he was still down, I was going in to get him. But when I got there, he was back up on his feet, dancing around, had tons of energy. There was no issue at all. And so danger averted, right? Well, afterwards, the chief calls me to his side again. He said, Michael, the trickiest way we have to get someone to enter the circle and give their power away is through love and compassion. He said, truly, if someone's entered the circle out of their own free will and is giving their energy away to the archons, there's nothing you can do by entering the circle to try to help them other than get your own amount of self-inflicted suffering. Because what was going on with this is everyone that says, okay, I will go and Sundance and I won't drink or eat anything for 4 days and dance all day, show Creator how much they love them, which is sad, you know, but that if spirit, and there's one person that is supposed to be the source to spirit, it's truly the Dark Lords, and they go, well, I think that person needs pierced. Then you get pierced through your skin with these huge needles that look like about the width of a small cigar, and it comes down to points on each end, and they shove them through the flesh in your chest, and you get strapped to this tree. And when you freed yourself, that's when your flesh offering, the spirit was over, and you'd get a prayer answered. And it was interesting too, because they dangled a carrot in front of this one guy, and for 4 days he was strapped to the tree and slept on the ground next to the tree, didn't eat or drink anything. And the carrot was that maybe if he did this, spirit would grant him eagle access, which status, I should say. And to the Native American Indians, the eagle status is like a state of consciousness. It's like Christ consciousness.
Right.
You know, the eagle is the only bird that when a storm comes, it flies above it. You know, it doesn't go and seek shelter. It flies above the storm and has the bird's eye view of everything, the bigger picture. So the eagle status is a very revered status, and it is like Christ consciousness to the Native American Indians. So they dangle this carrot. If you strap yourself to the tree, maybe spirit will think you worthy. And so they go and do it. The truth of the matter is, I just obtained eagle status, and it's only obtained by saying no. The whole ceremony is Heyoka. The whole ceremony is set up to try to find someone that will not follow the crowd up the crooked steps and enter the dark circle. But even if you get beyond the dark, the 7 lords of light is almost more difficult testing, because you have to prove you'll bring love and compassion to any suffering that comes your way, except if you pray for rain. And up until this point, when I met the Anunnaki in 2008, they told me that I was this being named Ea, water bearer. And you can imagine, if I didn't know what the hell an Anunnaki was, Ea, Inky made no sense to me whatsoever, and water bearer made even less sense. But now if someone looks me in the eye and says, hey, you said you're the water bearer, are you? Yes, I am. You know, in the NSA, the remote viewers, they call it LERM, Light Encoded Reality Matrix, which is the manifestation of something from no thing. It's truly learning how physical reality is created from light and sound, and being able to use your mental energy to manifest a physical reality. That there was no storm on the forecast. It was my LERM creation, and it took me a minute to actually, like, that was one of the biggest things that I can tell you that I've, you know, I know what it is now. But that was the whole culmination of, from 2008, meeting the Anunnaki and them telling me that I was Ea, water bearer, to 8 years later being at the front of this council. And what I want to tell you is, with the Ea part, the confirmation for that came as well. And how that happened was, the day before the ceremony, they went and cut down a tree that became the tree that people would get strapped to, and all that. So after the ceremony, we were all going to, you know, the ceremony to actually cut down the tree before it, to take it back to the Sundance grounds to actually put it back up. So we were all had been there. They had cut the tree down. We were all going back to the grounds to put it back up. And on the way back to the vehicle, let me grab a drink of water. Someone had ran up and grabbed my shoulders, and actually there's someone I hadn't seen before, and I didn't see him afterwards. And he said, the grandfathers are having a meeting and your presence is requested. I said, what the hell? You know, so, and he pointed into the woods. So I walked over where those woods were, and it's right where they had cut the tree down. And there was a young girl that was leaning up against the stump, and she said, they're right in there. And she pointed into the woods and said, you can't miss them. So I worked my way into the woods, and there was nothing there. And it wasn't very easy getting in there. I cut the shit out of my legs getting out of there with thorns and thickets, and I'm thinking, what the hell, you know, have I been Indian punked? You know, like, I didn't know what was happening. So I get out of there, we get back in the car, go back to the grounds, and when we're at the Sundance grounds, this little girl runs up to me and she goes, Spirit wanted me to tell you that the reason you didn't see the grandfathers was they were in spirit form. And I just was in such shock. I'm like, what did you just say? How did you know that? And she said, Spirit told me, and she like hopped off. And I'm like, whoa, this is getting crazy. So a little bit later on, one of the grandmothers, I had helped her, she had a walker and she needed help, you know, getting around. And so anytime I seen her, I gave her my arm to, you know, help her get where she was going. And we had become friends. And one of the other people had come up and they said, you know, they had talked to her for maybe about 5 minutes, and afterwards they said, well, thank you so much for your time, grandmother. Oh, by the way, is this your grandson? And she said, no, this is the grandfather. So then again, I'm like, all right, man, this is getting really freaking strange, you know? So this all culminated later on when one of the other grandmothers, we were again on that road that was outside of the grounds, and she pulled up in her minivan. She said, Michael, would you get in the van? I want to talk to you. And so I got in the van, really didn't know what it was. And she said, we want to give you a history lesson on the bloodline and how it got here, and how So she said it resides now. We know it's in the Iroquois, the Cherokee, Blackfoot, and in the Sioux. So she said she wanted to give me a history lesson of how the Sioux became truly their Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. And she said that each tribe has the exact same word. She said, I want to talk to you about dialect. And she said the same word. She said, let's use grandfather for instance. I'm like, wow, here's this grandfather thing again. You know, here I don't even have a kid. You know, I'm thinking, what the hell is this grandfather thing about? So she said the word for grandfather in Lakota ends in LA. The word for grandfather in Dakota ends in DA. And the word for grandfather in Nakota ends in NA. And this was really strange too, because she wanted to show me how they migrated, and when they wouldn't overuse or overtax the use of land and the natural resources. So once the tribe got too big, they would spread out. But to show me this, she said, I'd like to show you a map of the United States. And she wiped her hand over the inside of the windshield, and a map of the United States appeared on the windshield out of nowhere. It looked like a map from Star Wars or something. It was all red, and it looked like a computer-generated holographic map of the United States. She looked at me, and she said, I know you can see it. I'm like, well, yeah, I can see it. It's right there. It wasn't questionable, you know? So she proceeded for about the next 15 minutes to use that map that was now on the inside of her windshield of her minivan to show me how the tribes migrated. The reason I want to tell you is what I found out in the past after all of this. I didn't know it, but the word, the oldest Indian translation of grandfather is Ia. So again, you know, the confirmation of everything that they told me as far as being Ia and being water bearer came through the lesson that came through, you know, at the Sundance, the Halls of Amenti experience. So
hey, I got to just jump in real quick if I can for a second, Michael. You have been just great to listen to. I've got to jump off here now, but thanks for everything. And hopefully I'll have an opportunity to speak with you again in the future.
God bless, brother. And yeah, let's just chat on the phone here ASAP.
Right on, man. Sounds good. You take care, Jay. Have a good one.
Thanks, Rex. I'll talk to you soon. I'll give this to you later. So let's just keep going, Michael. I mean, obviously there's a ton of people watching in the group right now. And I have a bunch of questions for you, but do you want to just finish up that story and kind of summarize, and then we can go into the questions?
Pretty much that's it. You know, the end of day 3 ended up beautiful, but you know, the deal is that it only takes one to get through the Halls of Amenti portal. Because if one person can do it, anyone can do it, because we're all one and it's a holographic reality. So, you know, I had asked Chief specifically, I said, you know, has anyone that's ever started down the dark path realized that it's not necessary, and said no? And he said, no, no one ever. But what you need to recognize is, you know, if you're Chinese and you're brought before the council, it's going to have nothing to do with the Native American Indian ceremony. It's going to be it's gift wrapped for every culture. Like if you're a Christian, it's going to have a different, you know, but it always has a magically charged area where it's known that if you enter it, you're giving your energy or you know, your spirit away to something else. And one thing I can say is what he told me was, he said, you're at the most compassionate version, that there's not a lot of suffering going on. No one doesn't make it. You know, if someone collapses, there's someone there to give them a drink of water and help them. No one doesn't make it. And there's a lot of love and camaraderie, which there was. There was a lot of community feeling, but he said simultaneously on 6 other places on this planet, there's 6 more of these ceremonies happening in this very same moment, and everyone gets progressively worse and darker. And he said at dark level 3, we have over 500 people dancing. And if someone falls there, they get stampled on, you know, and trampled, and it just gets darker till if you make it to the end, you're expected to make puppy soup, and you can use your imagination. And, you know, animal sacrifice or child sacrifice in the past. And a lot of them, you know, were thinking maybe it would be a good idea to bring back some of those older, more severe testings, which obviously is just, it's not the right path. But you know, what I took away with this is, at one point, he said, Michael, it's all about free will and self-inflicted suffering. At this point, you know, not only if spirit said that person needs pierced, they either got it through the front, through the chest meat, Or the bigger dudes were pierced in the back, and they would pull buffalo skulls behind themselves, and it'd be a whole string of buffalo skulls, maybe about 7 of them. Right. And once they'd rip themselves free, that's when their offering was done and their prayer would be answered. And what was truly disturbing is if they didn't free themselves after about 3 times around the circle, they would bring people in to sit down on the skulls to weigh them down so they could rip them out of their flesh. But as this was going on in front of me, and I'm sitting next to him, he said, Michael, there's a million ways to pull those skulls behind oneself. That's only one. There's a million ways to give your power and energy away to an outside source. Right. That's only one. So this has been one of the most spiritual awakenings in my life for looking at ways that I'm giving my energy away, because we all do it. Right. It could be, your girlfriend tells you you're fat and ugly one day, and the whole next day you have no self-confidence, and well, truly you've given your energy and power away. And like he said, there's a million ways we do it. And so it's been a tremendous learning opportunity, and I'm still processing it because it wasn't that long ago I went through it.
It's awesome, man. Well, I mean, so your story's been amazing. I know Rex is obviously not here. We're still recording, so I'm going to give him when we're done. But dude, I have a ton of questions, and there's a lot of people also in the group watching right now that are asking questions. So let me just get through the questions that were originally prepared. I'm also going to ask you some off-the-cuff questions based on our conversation. So the one thing that still sticks out, I know Rex was pinging me on the side. He wanted you to answer this. Was so the first time you saw them when you were in this like circular, thing when you were in the festival or whatever. Mm-hmm. The pagan festival or whatever, and you said they had like a smoke screen on their face, the male and the female.
Yeah.
What were they like giant? Were they like over 7 feet tall? Were they normal size? And when they
they're totally normal size.
They're always normal size. So there was never any kind of like indication that they weren't human.
Except for being faceless. Both people have very high ranking positions within NASA. I found out. The gentleman had said, it was interesting. He said, I work for a group of people who determines what gets released to the public regarding the extraterrestrial subject. And you bring in Boyd Bushman, who was a senior scientist.
We've all seen the video of Boyd Bushman, so that's pretty fascinating, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? This is in 2008. This is long before that, and they were pissed. They said Boyd Bushman was not on the list to have his information released to the public. How could this have happened? And I looked him in the eye. I said, I manifested it.
Wow.
That movie was my baby. From Here to Andromeda, and we had interviewed and, went to actual Lockheed Martin's facility and have now he's passed away. So it's actually historic documentation. But I can tell you, with Boyd, his most recent deathbed confession, they instantly had this counter story and said, oh, that's not aliens. That's a Halloween doll, from Walmart or whatever. Right. I can tell you, the powers that be was very pissed off.
Oh, I'm sure.
So that shows you it was a smoke screen, in the Boyd Bushman case. But they said, how could this have happened? And I said, I willed it into manifestation because, once I started to understand thoughts create reality, right. I thought, what is the reality then that would help humanity in the twinkling of an eye, as they say, like wake up? And I thought about it, and I thought the only thing I could truly think that would be a big timeout for everyone to rethink everything we thought we knew as a race would be absolute proof we're not alone.
Right.
And so I put all my effort into doing that. I was having my own experiences here over the lake with Lake Erie. So I put all of my energy into cataloging, researching, and getting this information out to the world.
So with that said, and you and I were obviously talking before the show on this, and this leads to a lot of other questions. Do you believe, and I know you commented in the thread on the Decoders of Truth on this, let's go a little deeper. So do you believe that the great reveal, the lifting of the veil, the disclosure event, whatever you want to call it, do you think it's positive or it will be negative?
It's going to be positive. Truth, it may hurt, but if you don't put any attachments to it, truth is truth, it's, some people might be really scared when, we've had a lot of truth hidden from us. And I think on a cosmic level too, there's no one that can tell us we don't have the right to know our own history as a species.
Right.
We go back as a human race much further than 3,000-4,000 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Sure. So, all of that's happening, and it's not even, right now, a lot of your listeners might know what, there's a lot of energy happening in Antarctica.
So I'm going to get to that. Save that. So the next question is related to that. So the Anunnaki, the return of the Anunnaki.
Mhm.
So, this is a person's question. Should we be excited, terrified, somewhere between? Obviously, we should be excited if you're manifesting positivity. But what would you say to the people that are concerned about Project Bluebeam, right? That Project Bluebeam is the quote unquote archons, the NWO, whatever you want to classify, this negative energy force that's still in power in a lot of ways here on the planet, trying to, deceive man or deceive all of us in something else. Is it possible that they could try to do that before the Anunnaki actually truly do reveal themselves to us?
Maybe if the archons were still in control, and they're not.
But they're not anymore.
They're not anymore.
So you guys hear that? You guys hear that in the Decoders of Truth. This is great stuff, because a lot of us have believed that too, Michael. And I want you to share your thoughts on that. But Michael's article today, guys, about the actual dawn of the Aquarian Age was the 21st of this year, correct, Michael?
Yeah. It hit me because I was watching 2012 on TV last night. And, one thing that they've guided me into is as you said, cosmic harmonious frequencies, and how the granddaddy of it all is 432 hertz. Because it's truly, why it's important is if you take Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, our physicists now know, well, everything's both particle and wave. That's only the particle part of the equation. It's right there, m. M is mass, E equals energy, m equals mass, c is the speed of light squared. Well, 432, well, the question is, if that's only the particle part of the equation, where's the frequency component?
Right.
What's hidden? Once you've learned 432 squared is the speed of light within 1% accuracy, it's the only frequencies that plug in to the speed of light being c. So if you work it backwards, 432 frequencies squared equals c squared times mass equals energy. It's truly frequency leading to unlimited free energy by tuning into cosmic toruses, toroidal physics of energy. Yeah, frequency. What was the question?
Well, no. It just relates to your article today.
Yeah.
I was talking off air about how, I asked you, I said, the great change is occurring right now. And a lot of us are sensing that. My wife and I sense that. A lot of people inside the group, I know you guys are listening, are sensing it. We're struggling to sleep. It's like this cosmic energy or, this force is like, it's an upheaval, right? The world is really going through an energetic change. But you were saying that, the Russians have a technology now that they're starting to bring to the masses. That is, you want to talk a little bit about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick in a nutshell, what I realized yesterday regarding 2012 not being the accurate end of the Mayan calendar is when the show 2012, the movie was on, and it hit me. I go, because what they told me is our whole time system that humanity was given back in Sumeria, right, where, this right out of the gate, humanity had culture and, math and timekeeping. Well, it's really any timekeeping. They've encoded the 432 frequency into the actual method of timekeeping, and you can prove it for yourself. Is just, there's 60 seconds in a minute. So check out how many seconds is in 12 hours.
Right.
It's 43,200, 432. All time in the Mayan calendar, which was taught to them by Quetzalcoatl, which was an Anunnaki, would be 432 based frequencies and mathematics. And all 432 frequencies equal 9. 4 and 3 and 2 is 9. Its lower octave of 216. 2 and 1 and 6 is 9. Its lower octave 108, which is interesting because a lot of Tibetan monks they'll pray on 108 beads,
right.
And then 54 and then 27. All those numbers add up to 9. And when you take those frequencies and divide them by 12, 432 divided by 12 is 36. 3 and 6 is 9. 369, Tesla said, once we understand the magnificence of the 3 and the 6 and the 9, we'll unlock a key to the universe. Then I started to realize that even in our number system, when you take 1 times 12, it's 12, that's a 3. And then 2 times 12, it repeats 369, 369, 369 when you resolve those numbers down to their numerology number, or I don't even know how to put that. But so number system 369, it's all based on 432 because 432 divided by 12 is 369. Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm watching this 2012 show. I go, well, wait a minute. What's 2012? Well, 2 and 1 and 2 is 5. It resolves to a 5. Mm-hmm. It's not their method of timekeeping.
Right.
Their method of timekeeping would end on a 9. It's in our own way of even measuring time, which is 1 second times 12 hours is 432, you know?
Yeah.
So then I said, well, what the hell? What's the next year that truly equals up to 9, which would mark the end of their calendar? It's this year. And what's really interesting is the halls of Amenti, really truly what happens, they told me, is that is what programs the next year of physical 3D perceived reality. And every day within the halls programs the next 3 months. So, you know, the beginning of the year is December 21st of, you know, the winter equinox. So it all lined up like with what happened in the halls of Amenti. But it's really interesting then, because if this was truly the end of, you know, that one crop circle said the conduit is closing, still time, you know, but there's still good out there. We believe in you, but the conduit is closing. Boy, we came close to not making it, didn't we?
Well, let me ask you about that then, because obviously there's a million people asking this question, and Gerald's always talking about this. And obviously, you know, the big fear, quote unquote, you know, I hate saying fear, but, you know, the interpreting the data, interpreting the research, you know, they talk about Nibiru. They talk about, you know, the incoming, they talk about the body, the brown dwarf star, you know, it's a million names, Nemesis, Herculobus. Is Nibiru, is Nibiru the Anunnaki truly, the Anunnaki's home planet truly? Is it inbound, and is it possible that it's going to cause great perturbations of our you know, our orbit, our geomagnetic, you know, rotation? Are we going to have issues with the planet when it's here? I mean, again, Gerald Clark will say that his data interpretation is that it's in the next 2 years. You know, plus or minus, it could be in the early part of 2017. You know, we've had people, very high level, you know, physicists now talk about there's another planet in our solar system. So NASA's admitting it. You know, great scientists are admitting it. Is it something that we should be worried about or not?
Well, it's a loaded question, because you know what, it can be catastrophic, but it's absolutely, you know, if you look back in history records, every 3,600 years when it comes through, it's not catastrophic.
Right, it's not always catastrophic, right?
So the question becomes, well, what makes it a survivable transit compared to a not survivable transit? What I learned is where it transits through the solar system when it comes through. If it comes through between Mars and Jupiter, we got a fighting chance, because we have something to buffer its effects on our electromagnetic fields of the planet. But if it passes between Mars and Earth, now we got a problem, and it can cause a pole shift, right. You know. But what I want to show people is look into Buzz Aldrin recently stating, you know, there's a monolith on one of the moons on Mars. You know, when people find out it's there, he said, you look up the video, type in Buzz Aldrin moon monolith, and you'll find it. You know, he said when people find out that this monolith is there, they're going to ask who put it there. You know, and you know, A.R. Borden, who right. was the head of this, you know, NSA remote viewers. Sure. Actually, he was the head of this planet, really, because extraterrestrials are going to talk to a person who understands new life physics. They're, you know, right. But anyhow, he said he released that these monoliths are on all the nodal points where ley lines meet on all the planets, and truly it's Anunnaki technology to help with tectonic plate movement. Right. And he said the last time the Bureau came through, these were used to help alleviate some of the stress, and it worked very well, and it wasn't catastrophic.
So what you're saying, and Michael, and I honestly, I very much tend to agree with you. You know, Gerald and I have had very deep discussions. I also believe that through CERN, they're also manipulating gravitational pools, you know, and elliptical pathways of different planets and bodies. You're basically saying that they have left us technology now to ensure that this planet is not destroyed.
Yes, indeed. And I'll tell you what they told me. And, you know, this is really outside of the box for myself, but the mission and the group that I was brought into was to use remote viewing telepathy to contact the incoming and ask for help through the 2012 time period, because there was a lot of things happening in that time period. And so pretty much for every day for about a month, for 3 hours, I had a partner, and we partnered up and connected to the incoming and gave them all the most accurate data. And truly, our scientists had us for a doomsday transit. Right. That it was not going to be good. This was the worst case scenario of it passing through.
Well, that's also why they've been building the great underground cities and preparing, right? I mean, clearly.
Yes. Yeah. So we contacted them, said, is there anything that can be done? But part of the protocol was you can't just go and ask. You got to bring to the table what you find is your best solution to the problem as well. And to us here, it was, can you have a change of trajectory as you enter the solar system and physically shift the planet to come between Mars and Jupiter and give us a fighting chance? What I understand is they were kind of like, oh, look at the little kids trying to take the wheel. Oh, that's cute, you know, because truly they have technology. They said really what they did is ignited the world, the whole entire planet's Merkaba field. And people might know the Merkaba is like what, interdimensional travel vehicle. Well, everything has a Merkaba field. If igniting your own Merkaba field becomes an interdimensional travel vehicle, what would happen if you ignited the whole planet's Merkaba field? The whole planet would go interdimensional. And I said it's kind of like what they did with the Philadelphia experiment, put a false magnetic energy field. They ripped it out of the space-time continuum. They said once you're in the ether, time does not exist in the way that we perceive it, because it's way more fluid than we would believe here what time is. They said 1/100th of a second in the ether in our perceived time would be 36 years.
Wow.
So once they, in their own words, they said, we're going to get the hell out of Dodge, but we're going to take Dodge with us. In our reality, it would be only 1/100th of a second. Wow. Most of us wouldn't even notice it. It'd be like gone, you know, and now you're back in 1/100th of a second. But in the ether, 36 years had passed here. Wow. And the same way, the Philadelphia experiment, once they ripped it out of this space-time continuum, took it into the ether, when it popped back in, if you recall, it was in 1988 for a brief moment of time. Then it came back, and then the men were stuck in the halls. They didn't know what they're doing and all that. Well, it seems like the Anunnaki know what they're doing, but they said, truly, this had never been tried before in this manner, and it was a brand new effort. And I remember them saying they didn't even know how time would restart for us. They said they were really shocked that any of us remember anything prior to 2012, because they didn't even know how, because this had never been tried before to, you know, but their calculations were like, yeah, this is going to be horrific. So I can tell you though, in 2012, do you remember Hurricane Katrina?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, not Katrina.
Well, Katrina was the one that hit New Orleans that wiped it out.
Yeah,
it was completely engineered, we know, because of all the things that happened after.
Exactly. Well, Hurricane Sandy was coming into New York. If you
right, and it disappeared.
So this was right during the time frame of this, and they said they tasked this team to handle Hurricane Sandy. They said this is being artificially steered in, and the transhumanists want this to happen, and they're causing it. So I actually have all these tasking instructions still from the NSA. They said, we know you're not weathermen, but we're going to give you the most accurate data on the storm and its projected wind speeds and strength and everything. All we want you to do is read it. The incoming is going to be using you as their iPhone. You know, they're going to be seeing through your eyes, and they will know what to do with this data. You don't need to know. All we want you to do is put your eyes on it. So I still have that tasking instructions and everything. I'll share it with you, and you can share it with the listeners. But yeah, but people don't know. Simultaneously during that time, there was an earthquake called Earthquake Charlotte, and that was on the left side of the United States, and it had created a tsunami that was estimated to be 15 to 20 foot tall that was heading straight for Hawaii. So I brought that to the team myself. And well, as you know, the storm disappeared, the hurricane, you know, and the buoys in the ocean don't lie. There was a tsunami coming towards Hawaii. Well, those two events really pissed off the transhumanists. And because we threw a monkey wrench in them trying to do their depopulation agenda. But so a lot of people think, 2012 was this huge non-event. They have no idea what was happening behind the scenes. I'm proud to be part of those projects. People don't have no clue what was happening. It's kind of interesting.
Well, Michael, it's been almost 90 minutes, man. I want you, one final question, and then I want you to be able to throw out, promote your stuff. I want you to talk about your energy discs. I want people to find out about them. My wife and I are definitely going to get one. But just your summary thoughts on, obviously for the Decoders of Truth, for the people that watch the Leak Project, where this will be on in a couple of days, what does humanity have to look forward to over the next 100 years?
Beauty, the golden age, a time for humanity where we'll be able to follow our creative desires and from some very high sources. Nazera is about to be implemented, and I didn't even think that was a reality anymore.
So let me stop you real quick. So guys, in the Decoders of Truth, Nazera is the group that got Trump installed, the quote unquote white, knights or the white hats or whatever that, overtook the, as you've been calling them, the transhumanists, the cabal, all of that stuff. So go ahead, Michael, continue.
Right on. Not to disagree with you, and I don't even know if it's fact or not. I don't know about the Trump connection. Personally, I have a real hard problem with Trump because I truly thought he was a man-child long before this election. And I could think of a million people I would put before him. But anyhow.
No, I don't think don't get me wrong. I don't think that he is a great person. I think, though, that he is I think he's being controlled by the Nazara group. That's what I'm saying.
You know, it very well could be because, well, all I can tell you is the person that contacted me is the CEO of the Jason Society, who the Majestic 12 has turned into.
Right.
And they're truly the smartest people on the planet. They're the Illuminati scientists, if you want to, you know, in quotes. They're the ones that have put me in contact with the Wave Genome Group out of Russian National Security, which is Tesla-based technology, that unlimited free energy. And so I trust him and who he says he is. And he tells me we're right on the cusp of Nazara being revealed. And it's going to be, you know, right when I got through the testing at the Halls of Amenti, they said, you're going to recognize and have proof come all around you that the Dark Cabal has lost their power.
Awesome.
And instantly, right before that, it hit me that China just went to a new gold-based currency. People don't know this, but they're not accepting U.S. Federal Reserve notes to or from it. That's chopping off the head of the Illuminati banking cartel. And because very soon the American fiat,
the fiat currency.
yeah, it's going to be useless and worldwide. And so that's how they fund their black projects and everything. They just create money out of thin air and rape us over it. That's coming to an end. And then all of a sudden, and I knew this was huge because, you know, Bad Cop does have, picture if you were in charge of Team Bad Cop, there's still the best thing that could be possible through that dark path. And they thought, well, if humanity evolved technologically as quickly as possible, that might help us, you know, during the end times. But they knew, you know, technology without spirituality will lead to self-imploding, you know.
Right.
So you need to have a balance of the male and feminine energies. But don't be afraid of what's happening.
Right.
You know, so if you wanted to take a whole race into a more technological evolutionary stream, truly you would guide the whole species to use the analytical engineering part of the brain and shut down the feminine, the creative aspect to take them. So it was very intentional that they started removing the feminine qualities from mass consciousness and taking, now the Pope said, oh, guess what? You know, Mary Magdalene, guess what? She wasn't a whore and a hooker. She turns out to be the apostle of apostles. And he just said this, it was revealed. So right when I seen that, I knew Dark was not in control anymore because it was part of their program to remove the feminine. Now the feminine is returning and reverence being given. Over and over again, I've seen aspects that showed me that they were losing their grip and control here. And it's going to continue to happen. I think we'll see the dominoes of the Federal Reserve being removed. And look into Nazara. It's called the National Economic Stabilization and Reformations Act.
Right.
And truly, I think how it should be viewed is it's truly the installation of a galactic society. And everything that is not at that level, it needs to go. And that there are systems that are truly beneficial and will help mankind reach the next golden age, waiting in the wings. And we will see every dark cloud reveal its silver linings. So
that's awesome, man. Well, dude, so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, you know, I want you to promote, you know, your site and talk a little bit about your energy discs so that people, you know, watching this can take advantage of that.
Right on. Well, my website is michaelleehill.net. And the energy discs are an interesting thing that happened. I had met a woman who had learned this art form of creating these discs from another Pleiadian contactee, and they had downloaded these crystal discs, which is, you know, crystal glass quartz, and they have a copper wrap around it, and there's sacred geometry encoded in the disc. They said the most important thing was the image that was in the disc and to focus on things that were sacred geometry. If you take the idea of, say, pyramid power, that certain geometry has an innate subtle energy form that comes with it. And so whatever that subtle energy that comes in through the geometry, it can't leave the disc because it's wrapped in copper. Mm-hmm. So it's gonna, when you actually hold it then in your hand, it creates the circuit to work with that energy that's coming through. Well, I had learned how to do these discs from her, and I thought they were all beautiful, but at the same time, being a musician, I was studying what's called cymatics, which is a new scientific endeavor of making the invisible visible,
Right.
you know, making frequency visible. And what it was your listeners might be familiar with, like, they'd have a big round metal plate and it'd have sand on it, and it'd be tuned to a frequency. They'd bow it and you could watch the sand dance and geometry would form. And it wasn't random. Every time they hit specific frequencies, specific geometry would form. Well, now that has evolved till they have a big vat of water and they can pump frequency through the water, and they have a real high-tech camera that records what's going on and, you know, what geometry is being created. So I tracked down the leaders in this field and I sent them an audio track of my guitar recorded in my recording studio, but I was methodical about making sure it was tuned to A equals 432, not 440. And so I sent them a 20-second sound file and hired them to make a cymatic image of that frequency. And I hear back from them. They're like, we've used this technology to image everything from dolphin noises and making, you know, they can create a dictionary of dolphin language of this sound makes this, you know, pattern, and know what they're talking about. They've imaged everything, but they said, we've never imaged an electric rock guitar.
That's awesome.
And, yeah, and they said truly what they thought it was I have a Joe Satriani amplifier, which was after the Vi thing, I ended up becoming friends with Joe, which was just another mind fuck, you know. But anyhow, so I get this image that just blew them away. They said, we've never seen this kind of complexity or multidimensionality within an image. They said that the whole middle of it encoded all of the platonic solids of sacred geometry. And then in the middle, there's a toroidal donut that has the Fibonacci spiral. And, you know, so matter of fact, they asked me, they said, do we have your permission to release that full 20 seconds as a video to show these images being created in real time? Because, you know, what I received was only one still frame from that whole 20 seconds. So that's live right now. You can go to cymascope.com and go to their video section, and you'll find this. But I can tell you how this gets back to the crystal discs is, I thought, why use computer generated sacred geometry in these disc creations when we could go to Mother Nature and actually have the actual response of frequency within a physical medium like water. Right. And it's so encoded. Like, I've taken a cymatic image of a D note tuned properly, and I overlaid the flower of life. And you can see just how absolutely perfectly it's encoded with really deep sacred geometry knowledge. So I'm like, you know what, why don't I put some of my chocolate in their peanut butter? And I made my first disc with my cymatic image, and right away the thing was just buzzing in my hand, you know. So I've started to release these to the world. They're all handmade one by one, and it's kind of a work in progress. People are asking me, well, what do you do with them? I'm like, you know, people are finding out new uses every day. I know you can clean chakras with them. You know, just go over chakra centers, and it'll clear them and balance them.
Don't you also think, Michael, it'll heal DNA or reprogram DNA for sure, right?
Absolutely. It's, you know, your cells are wanting 432. You know, now in the past they thought cells communicate through electricity discharge. You know, now they know it's not. It's frequency. It's sound. Right. And so you can imagine if you start to tap into what frequencies do cells use to communicate, it's obviously the end of disease as we even know it. And it's going to be 432 base frequencies. But I've had other people tell me that, you know, they put them under their pillow when they sleep and they invoke out-of-body experiences. I've had people, one of the most interesting ones is this gentleman has a pure water business called Maple Water, and making maple syrup, there's a process, a byproduct, that's water that gets filtered through a maple tree. And it turns out to be one of the most pure programmable waters on the planet. But I'll tell you, once you drink this water, it'll kind of piss you off because you realize what we're drinking is not water. You know, this stuff is so liquidy, you know. And but the point was, he got one of my discs, and I seen him at the next conference, and he called me over. He said, Michael, I want to show you something, what your discs are doing to this water. And he took a glass of water and he poured maybe about an inch in the bottom of it. And he said, now drink this, but don't pay attention to the taste, he told me. He said, pay attention to its consistency. Right. You know, and so I took a sip, and he said, okay, now he put it down on my crystal disc, and he only left it for about 5 seconds. You know, that's all it takes. He goes, now try it.
Right.
And sure enough, it was so much. He said it restructures the water on a molecular level and brings more molecules per unit. So your cells get really hydrated, you know? So these things, we're just figuring out what they do, you know? And they're beautiful. I tell people, you know, sometimes at these conferences, I'll have a vending table and they're like, what do these do? And I'll go through the whole spiel. And at the end, I'll go, oh, it's a nice paperweight. You know, it works on many levels.
No, honestly, it's fascinating. I would also say that I use an app for everybody. It's called the 432 Hertz player. It's free. You can download it for Android or iTunes. And whenever I train, exercise, or whatever, do my meditation, I put that behind whatever I'm doing because it changes the resonant frequency. So it's badass. But yeah, I'm totally with you. 432 is the way to go. Everyone should literally putting that into their life as much as possible. So guys, everybody watching this, please support Michael's work. You know, go to his website. You know, order one of these things. As he said, these are handcrafted. You know, he puts a lot of time and effort into these. I know my wife and I are going to get one. So Michael, dude, you're the man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. You have any final thoughts?
No, just thank you for giving me this opportunity to share. And I absolutely, you know, they said that the deal is choose love relentlessly, regardless of the outside appearance of things. So no, when the temples start falling, it might create a lot of chaos, but since we're talking about it, and it's know that there's a silver lining in a dark cloud. And I personally don't think it's going to get very dark at all, because the Dark Lords are now, they've been told to stand down. Look what happened at Standing Rock recently. Right. Tell you what would have happened. We would have had first contact right then and there, because those are the Nephilim there. Right. And if they would have proceeded with their dark ways, it would have been done and over. And they knew it. And so don't be afraid. It's going to be beautiful, and we're all in this ride together. So stick around for the golden age.
Awesome, man. Well, Michael, again, man, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off. Guys, everybody in the Decoders of Truth, thank you so much, Leak Project. Happy New Year to all of you guys, and we'll be talking. We have actually another guest lined up for next week, so more about that soon.
His heart, and from the Anunnaki, literally, he says. And if he goes and gets an MRI, essentially, or not an MRI, but where he goes into the machine, yeah, an MRI, like it messes with his heart. He can't do it. So I can't wait to hear if there's some parallels there. And please tell our audience about your testimony, because that's what we're here for.
Oh, right on. I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So let's just start off with Michael's life. So Michael, just tell us a little bit about, you know, like I said when we were talking before the show, you have an interesting, fascinating life. Tell us a little bit about you. You're a musician. You know, before all of this stuff came to you about the esoteric, the Anunnaki, you know, you're finding out about your Indian bloodline. Just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, more than anything, I'm a musician, a guitarist, and that's where my passion has been. And actually, I've found my closest connection to source has been through music. You know, I was very serious about music to the point that in 2001, I ended up winning a nationwide guitar contest. Your listeners may know who Steve Vai is. He played for Frank Zappa. And then when David Lee Roth quit Van Halen, he was one of my idols, and he ended up holding a guitar contest. You know what? I got to tell this. This is way before meeting the Anunnaki or anything. I work for this company. And it gets back to Steve Vai music. So, you know, I started having contact with the Anunnaki about late 2000 and the late 2000s, actually, right around the 2000 threshold there. And they told me, you know, if thoughts create reality, and if you have enough faith to step out without a net, so to speak, because I worked at this company for 15 years and worked my way into management. I had a house and a car, but, you know, I projected myself in the future, and money didn't even matter. I was like, God, if I'm an old man, I'm still working here. It seems black to me, you know? So I ended up putting myself on the layoff list, and they didn't want to do that, but we worked it out where they said, if you stay till the end, we'll give you a nice severance package. So that worked out, and about 5 months went by, and no magical doors had opened. You know, they told me if you just had the faith that, you know, you would meet who you need to meet, and doors would open, and it would be effortless. And that's the way it should be if you're in the flow with the universe, you know. So 5 months went by, nothing had transpired, and I started to have that negative inner dialogue, like, what are you doing? You know, you got a house and all this shit. And in that point, I had the most lucid vision and dream. And in it, I was led down a corridor, and it led into a club, and Steve Vai was doing a sound check. And I was like, oh my God, that's Steve Vai, you know, because I'm such a fan, you know, like to me, I get starstruck, you know, holy crap, Steve Vai. And he was doing a song in this vision. It was called There's a Train That's Leaving. And I remember it being very spiritual. And he was actually levitating off the floor as he was performing. And he turned around and levitated right over to where me and this guide was. And the music stopped. And he said, welcome aboard. But when he said, welcome aboard, it was like in one of those movie divine God voices, you know, and it woke me right up out of this lucid vision state. And I was like, what the heck was that about, you know? And I just chucked it into my, can we swear on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I call it my what the fuck drawer in my mind, you know? So that went right into the what the fuck drawer. And the next morning I got
Exactly.
So I woke up the next day and I had this really crazy premonition feeling that there's a synchronicity waiting for me at vi.com. So I went there, and in my mind I was like, man, wouldn't it be weird if he was really working on a song called There's a Train That's Leaving or something like that? Well, the first thing when I visited his website, it said, enter the Steve Vai Ibanez Guitar Challenge. The fur went up on the back of my neck, man. I knew I was going to win that contest, and I haven't even recorded a note, you know, for the contest. And I was so confident because I just met him the night before in this vision, and he said, welcome aboard. So sure enough, you know, the stars ended up lining up, and I did end up winning the contest. And it was a huge confirmation for me to, you know, let go and let God, as they say. I don't really like the word God, by the way. It has so much baggage that comes with it. I like all that is, but it is what it is.
Awesome.
So that's the music thing. You know, I've went on to, you know, I've produced 3 CDs. I've done the soundtrack to a documentary me and David Sarita did called Music from Here to Andromeda. And so music has always been the backbone of everything I've experienced. But yeah, like you said, things really started to change in 2008. So
talk a little bit about that. So what happened?
Well, I live very close to Lake Erie, and around 2005 time period, I started seeing these orbs of light out over Lake Erie. And it got to the point where I decided to see if I could find some, you know, shoreline, some beaches that I could go down around sunset and hang out and see if I could get some of this stuff on film. And sure enough, you know, I would go down with my little Sony Digital 8 handy camcorder, and I would have it on a tripod, and I'd have it set up, and I'd just sit around sunset and after, and if a big ball of light went by, I was sitting there waiting and ready to film them. And also one thing I learned from David Sarita was that these orbs, you can, sometimes you can't see them in our normal spectrum of light, but if you go to infrared, they're very visible because they're actually vibrating in higher frequency realms than our eyes can pick up, you know, like bees and birds, they can see into the infrared, and, you know, we can't. So I learned how in my camera to, while I was filming them, I would go from normal shot where you could see all the nice, beautiful colors, and I'd flip the switch into super night vision. And then all of a sudden you'd see the lay of the land and, you know, the lake, and, you know, really get an idea of what you're looking at. And then I'd switch it back to get, because I really like seeing the color, you know, so it was daunting for me to figure out which mode to film it in. But I started to accumulate quite a library of footage, and it ended up where right now my YouTube channel has over 4.5 million views.
That's awesome.
And that, if anyone wants to check it out, it's Frozen Hill, all one word, and that's my YouTube channel. But that is what brought the History Channel to my door, is that they were doing a show on Skywatchers, and I was going to have about a 5-minute segment in the show, and they were going to cover the Lake Erie UFOs, and that was that. When they came to interview me in late 2007, they had went to Virginia 2 weeks prior, and they had interviewed another contactee, and his name was Terrell Copeland. And what they had found is Terrell had filmed the exact same orbs of light that I had filmed over Lake Erie. He had the same bed of spiritual information given to him, which is the, you know, belief, which is our thoughts, feelings, and emotions create our own perceived physical reality.
Right.
And the same kind of story of contact. What they found out with him, though, was he was getting deployed overseas, and they did a thorough medical test and blood work, and what they found was he had a blood anomaly that none of the best military doctors could find out why that he had this. So he was given an honorary discharge out of the military. So the History Channel thought, wow, wouldn't it be weird if these two guys that have such similar stories, that have never met each other, they're 500 miles apart, if this other guy in Cleveland, being me, wouldn't it be weird if I ended up with that same unknown blood anomaly? So without
Is it
telling me,
Rh negative blood?
it's not, a lot of people ask me that, and I can tell you that why this is kind of funny is I am the biggest baby when it comes to needles. Like, it's almost a phobia, and I have never given blood. It scares the hell out of me I do not like needles. Maybe it was just a defensive mechanism, but so what had happened, they didn't tell me, because if they would have told me they were flying me to Boston to have my blood work done by a Harvard professor, I probably would have said no, because I'm like, hell no, it's not sticking a needle in me, But
Right.
when I got to Boston, that's exactly what was going on. And they had flown Terrell there as well. And they had our blood work done by a Harvard professor. His name was David Systrom. And this episode, by the way, is called Alien Contact, and it's on UFO Hunters season 1. And
I've actually seen that. I still have I've watched all those episodes. I've taped them on DirecTV about 2 or 3 times, and they continue to tape. So I've seen that episode, actually.
That's
right
awesome.
on. Yeah, what's weird with that is I never knew how the History Channel felt about the show. But Bill Burns, the host of UFO Hunters and many other things, he had wrote a book and released it in 2011 called UFO Hunters the Book. And, Bill's a New York Times best-selling author. He did The Day After Roswell with Colonel Philip Corso. So, by the way, we can get into that, because I found out there are some things that weren't included in the book, and I got Bill to tell me what it is, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
So in the book, I found out for the first time it was our episode that got the show renewed for a second season. They liked the drama of Bill saying, these guys are hybrids, and the other host is going, dude, you just can't say that out loud, So yeah, remember that part where they went outside and kind of yelled at each other, and Bill's like, hey, it is what it is. He said they don't have normal human blood. I can tell you guys, if you're interested, the details of the blood anomaly that they did find.
That'd be fantastic. And if you could, as well, as not only the details on it, but is there any type of paperwork or anything that verifies this kind of stuff? Is that why they were so interested to discuss this with you and actually put it on that channel? Because that's a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah. Yes, and it's actually anyone that has their blood work done up. It's a test that it's going to be a part of any blood test, and that is your creatine kinase levels.
Right.
And creatine kinase, everyone's brains releases this enzyme, and the normal levels of this in the blood is 25 parts per liter of blood is creatine kinase. And creatine kinase brings oxygen into the bloodstream. So what happens is, if you've done bodily damage to yourself, or you've ripped a muscle, or had a heart attack or something like that, that your brain releases more creatine kinase, up to about 300 parts per liter of blood. So it brings more oxygen into the bloodstream to facilitate healing to that damaged area. So what they found, if you, let's go back and say the normal levels of creatine kinase in the blood is 25 parts per liter of blood. My levels were at 2,100.
Wow.
So you can imagine it's, the blood is being super oxygenated. Yeah, that's a word. And what I found out was the more oxygen in the blood equates to how much electrical capacitance your body is holding on a cellular level, which could be considered chi or prana or life force, whatever you want to call it. So this all gets into an indicator of what this is later on. We can get into this, but when I met the Anunnaki a little bit later on, they said, what they released on the History Channel is an indication of your being in our hybrid bloodline, because we had to create an offshoot of the human vessel that had more chi available, because when we tried to incarnate into the human vessel prior to the Nephilim being created, they spontaneously combusted. The human body wasn't capable of handling their energetic levels, so they had to create an offshoot that they could come in to try to steer this experiment from the inside, because there's an absolute reason why we've been going through everything that we've been going through. But so the Rh negative, a lot of people ask me, I don't know, I've heard that yes, it is an indicator of the Anunnaki bloodline. What I don't know is if everyone that is Rh negative is also has this creatine kinase increase, because when I was brought into the remote viewers group, they told me they had about 200 members in this group, and 12 of them had my bloodline, and my levels of 2100 would put me in about the middle of those 12.
Wow.
So I don't know the answer to, this is a work in progress. We'll figure it out together.
Let me take you a little bit back, Rex. I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me just take you a little bit back real quick. So you said the Anunnaki.